Hey everyone, Gill Gross here post-match. Daniil Medvedev versus Dominic Thiem, Vienna 2022, second round. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video in 3, 2, 1. Daniil Medvedev wins this one comfortably, 6-3, 6-3, and continues to kind of look like the best version of Daniil Medvedev that we saw since January, a continuation of the impressive form that we saw from Medvedev in Astana, where he looked good against Novak Djokovic before having to retire in that match. And thankfully, the injury wasn't something that was going to be an issue long term, so he's back, and he looks good here against Thiem. I want to get into a couple of trends just to start off with Thiem that kind of inform us in terms of where he is on his comeback. His comeback into the top 50 or whatever it will be. By the way, his level is easily a top 50 level, and I can prove that to you. He's won 11 of his last 12 first-round matches. So he's been really tough to beat in these first matches. Then in the second round, he's 7-4, and in the third round, he's 4-3. So you see his win percentage just kind of going further and further into the losing direction as tournaments go on. And that just kind of tells you that he's still working on recovering and staying fresh throughout the week, you know, continuing to be strong physically, match in and match out when he has to kind of recover and play a lot of long matches in successive days, which is something that he talked about. He's talked about really throughout the summer, trying to improve. The second thing is trying to beat the best in the world. He's actually become quite consistent in terms of beating the opponents that he's supposed to beat. He is 18-4 since Stade against opponents outside the top 20, which is an excellent record. He's won 8 of his last 9 such matches, but then you look for the big wins, the explosive wins. Well, he hasn't beaten a top 10 player still since 2020 at the year-end championships. His last win over Novak Djokovic at the O2 Arena in the semifinals of the Nitto ATP finals. And I think here in 2022, let me get this, he is 0-3 now against top 10 players. Hasn't won a set. Hasn't won more than 4 games in a set. He's just looked a little bit outmatched. And then if you look at his top 20 wins, one over Bautista Agut on clay and one over Hurkacz last week in Antwerp, which is a really good win. That was in a third set tiebreak. That's probably his best win of the year. And those are his only 2 top 20 wins in completed matches. So he's still having trouble against the top guns. He's still having trouble as tournaments progress to maintain the kind of level that we've seen in the first round. Keep in mind, he's never really seeded, so it's not like he's playing slightly better opponents as the tournament goes on, but that doesn't really explain that kind of disparity in his win percentages. So, as for this match itself, I felt that Medvedev's defense was a problem for Dominic Thiem. Medvedev does a couple of things that make it difficult to attack him and finish him. One of the things is his height of bounce, just keeping the ball low. Rarely does Medvedev surrender attackable balls that players, or when Medvedev is trading, rarely are you going to get a ball to attack that kind of comes up to shoulder level. You're generally having to create from lower contact points, and that forces opponents to hit up on the ball and generally add some spin. So keeping that average contact point low is a defensive measure for Medvedev, and it's a big deal. And obviously, his speed forces his opponents to increase the quality of attack in order to finish the points. And I thought this combination was pretty problematic for Thiem trying to create off of the forehand, because over and over and over again, Thiem was missing forehands long, attacking forehands long. It was by far the most common rally outcome, in my view, was these forehands missing long. He missed 2 in the game that he was broken in the first set. He missed 1 on set point. You look at the forehand numbers overall, 5 winners to 16 unforced errors on forehand ground strokes, according to Infosys's tracking, which in my opinion is much better than what you'll see on like the Tennis TV stats, because that includes a forehand volley, a forehand right on top of the net, which I think Infosys would count as an approach shot. In terms of just ground strokes, 5 winners to 16 unforced errors. Even if you include the forcing shots, Thiem was still negative on his forehand. And if you look at those misses, I have no doubt about it, the vast majority of them were missing just long, because he just wasn't bringing the ball down. He wasn't able to bring the ball down, not enough RPM. Against a slower opponent, maybe he could have just taken a little bit off of his forehand. Not an option against Medvedev. He was trying to go big from a low contact point, and he wasn't getting the ball to drop. This is something, when it comes to his forehand, that has been a work in progress. It requires extreme levels of racket speed and wrist lag. The wrist lag is where a lot of that topspin comes from on a forehand, which is kind of, the fact that as you're bringing your arm forward, you kind of drop your racket head under the ball at the very last moment before kind of coming through the ball. That's generally referred to as wrist lag. And, flexible and, wrist flexibility and stuff, that's a big deal. And that's obviously something that was directly affected by the injury. I just don't think Thiem's forehand is back yet. I don't know what percentage it is, but, there was a time where when Dominic Thiem had attacking forehands, it didn't matter how slow the surface was. It didn't matter who he was playing. He was going to be able to get the ball through the court because his forehand was just that special as a weapon. And right now, it's not quite at that level. It's not as bad as it was, where, I still think that from a high contact point, when he can flatten the ball out a little bit more, I still think that he can hit it pretty big. I still think that he, at this point in time, it is a good tour level forehand, a very good tour level forehand, but it is not the showstopper that it needs to be, and that it was. And that was a big deal against Medvedev. Maybe wouldn't have been apparent against other opponents who just don't cover the court quite as well. Most common results of the 5-8 shot rallies and the 9+ rallies were Thiem unforced errors, right? In Infosys tracking, that was the most common result. That doesn't mean over 50%, but it means among all of the different results, that was the most common one. Thiem's legs did seem to go on him, 1-all in the second. Assist to Tommy Paul on that one. Tommy Paul bringing Dominic Thiem into the trenches in their first round match, and Thiem had to save a couple of match points. Ended up winning that one in 2 hours, 55 minutes. So, given that match and what we've seen from Thiem kind of struggling to recover for future matches, it's not really surprising that we saw Thiem lose a lot of energy during this match. But also, Medvedev drowns you. He drowns you in terms of his ability to get returns in play and drag out rallies on his return games, and then play quick rallies and play fast between the points on his service games. Now, Medvedev, 60% of his service points were 4 shots or less. For Thiem, that same number, only 41%. So he drowns you because you're having to work so much harder on your service games. And then he's winning his service games very quickly. Medvedev's serving seems back. It seems back at that elite level. 60%, Medvedev got twice as many unreturned serves that Thiem did, twice as many, and he hit 10 less serves total. The first serve stats for Daniil, really awesome. 71% in, 78% won, 46% unreturned. That's great stuff there. And I want to end on Medvedev just kind of getting irritated with this Vienna crowd, obviously Thiem's home country of Austria, the Austrian capital. And Medvedev, by the end of the match, was kind of jawing at, I think it was a specific group of fans, giving them a thumbs up. I don't think he signed any autographs after the match intentionally because he wasn't happy with how the crowd treated him. And, you know, I did have my volume pretty low as I was watching the match, so I may have missed some of the nuances of what was going on there. But I just want to say I don't really have a problem with him going back at a crowd. Medvedev has kind of shown a sort of defiance that he's not really just going to kind of take that beating from a hostile crowd, and he's going to kind of give a little bit of disrespect almost back, send it back, which morally and ethically I have zero problem with. You know, Medvedev can stand up for himself. But he does have to understand, and this has been an issue I think for him in the past, he has to understand that he's going to make it worse by doing that. He is going to egg on the crowd. It is not going to improve the situation. It is quite literally going to make it worse. And he needs to decide if he's okay with that or not. And then he also needs to evaluate and figure out if it's hurting his tennis. In this case, it didn't seem to. In the past, I think potentially it has. And it's been interesting that in 2022, it just seems that we've seen Medvedev's relationship with the crowd ever since Australia just kind of play a larger role in how his matches are going. And I don't know if there's a hypersensitivity at this point, but it is certainly something to monitor. This Vienna draw is stacked, as is the other one this week, which somehow I'm blanking on at the moment. What's the other event? I can't sign off the video until I remember. Oh yeah, Basel. Yeah, both draws are really, really good. So looking forward to continued coverage of it. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.